Well, good morning, everyone. A good happy Monday morning out there to all the folks all around the world. I suppose though you're all celebrating this at a different time. So I suppose if you're listening to this in Australia, well, it's no longer morning. So sorry to all you guys. I guess it can be Monday evenings with Matt and Kevin for the folks over there. Unfortunately, it's not a very happy Monday morning for Matt. Matt is suffering from a pretty serious stomach illness. It sounds like. He's given me a few of the details, nothing too specific, but sounds pretty rough. So let's, everyone, if you could offer up a prayer for Matt, that would be pretty awesome. I imagine he'll be back next week. We actually had some really good topics to cover, which should still be interesting next week. So we will plan on that for next Monday. But this week we have a special guest, someone who I've gotten to spend a little bit of time with over the last few years, and gotten to know their opinions, I suppose, and some of them are pretty okay. Some of them are, well, I guess we'll let you judge as we go. And that is my lovely wife. That's Ina Davis, and we're actually recording this on Mother's Day. So Ina, I have to say first of all, happy Mother's Day to everyone who's listening on Monday morning. Happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. To my mother, yeah, I guess we hope you all had a very lovely day. Perhaps barbecued, maybe just got a nap in. I mean, I don't really know. I think that's probably what a lot of mothers just want, a little bit of peace. Right? Is that what is it that when you have got a couple of kids, the most valuable thing is probably time. Would you say?
Yeah, probably just a little bit like of alone time, or probably, yeah.
Well, I remember seeing a video one time of I don't even remember if it was a commercial or something, and they're saying you need some alone time, and you see the mother's sitting in the bathroom, like just like on the tub, just trying to get it kind of away from the kids, and you see the kids' fingers curled up underneath the door, trying to peek under. It's like, yep. I definitely know that you have experienced that, as I think most of the mothers out there have as well. It is not an easy job. In fact, it's definitely one of the hardest ones out there, but also one of the most rewarding. I know, Ina, you would say that as well. So again, happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. And Matt, we hope you get better. Today, we wanted to talk about a few things. So Ina and I, we talk a lot. And part of that is because we don't have a television in our house. Now, we do have a TV, but we keep it down in the basement and bring it up pretty much maybe once a month. Ina, is that about right? I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Probably about once a month. I mean, typically we watch The Lord of the Rings. We watch, The Reluctant Saint. There are movies we watch. I like Jane Austen. There are some that we'll bring up, kind of once a month to watch something. Sometimes we'll watch documentaries. But we've really kind of given up on television. Television we don't have at all. I mean, TV, if you're talking about, watching programs or whatnot, we don't watch it all. We don't have Netflix. We don't have Amazon. And we rarely watch movies. And the point of the show is not to, tout how awesome and holy we are, though. I don't know. It's probably true. Well, are we? We're pretty holy, right? No, but really, what we want to talk about is pretty interesting. Something that even though we don't really watch movies, we've been able to watch from afar, I suppose, and see kind of what's going on in Hollywood. And one of the strange, and not just Hollywood. I mean, really, it's entertainment as a whole. And one of the things we've noticed in the last, let's say, 10 years is that there's this weird switch to moral vagueness. Is that what would you call it, Ian? It's kind of this trying to make everything gray.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And there's always two sides. Like, oftentimes you have to overcome evil, or, good people struggle with evil. But I think a lot of the modern stuff is somehow different. Like, it's really subtle sometimes, but it's like almost like it mixes really the limits between good and evil. And it's really like a trend in all major movies and series. And
Yeah, right, exactly. And something that's come to our attention lately, or come to our minds, we've talked about it, is the Lord of the Rings. I know we talked about this on the show, but it's to me it's the best novel, it's the best literature out there in terms of something that's just purely entertainment. So of course there are better books and more important books, but just in terms of entertainment, that's my favorite. Ina, I think you would probably agree. Have you finished the whole books? I don't actually even know. Put you on the
I
spot.
listened to the entire audiobook at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely close enough. Yeah, I mean, I we'll count it as a B minus, I suppose. But but what we notice in that, if you look at the characters in that as an example, that there are good characters, there are bad characters, and there are characters that are now bad that used to be good. There are characters that are good that have flaws. There are characters that are good that do bad things and that make mistakes, etc. And I think that some people might consider that to be boring because in general the good characters, your heroes, your protagonists in the Lord of the Rings are virtuous in general. Again, they fail, they struggle, but in general they're after good. They're searching in the end for good, and good prevails in the end. And Ina, do you think is that something that's kind of changed? I suppose that they just think that's too bleh. It's too boring to just have virtuous characters, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. And I think maybe they don't even understand it anymore entirely in Hollywood. I mean, I know that's been like kind of like a trend or a struggle in Hollywood that they don't produce anything anymore that really is original or new. Like they really struggle. Why is everything boring that comes out of Hollywood right now? And I think partly is, yeah, they don't understand it anymore. What truly captures us, what is fascinating. And so all they have is kind of like shock value. So they try to build more shock with each thing, and that's how to hook people. But it's really strange. So they don't put out these stories anymore that like stay with you and like really like impact you. It's more like, okay, they get stuff almost that makes you addicted, I think. At least that's what it sounds like. Because you're like, okay, what's the next crazier thing that could happen in this
Hmm.
series or in this movie? And so I don't know, it's just a totally new way to create movies, I think.
It's a great point, and as you said, it's failing, and that's something that we could talk about in a bit too. But I heard an example recently that if you look at Star Wars, and again, that's something that not everybody likes. It's something I used to be a really big fan of. I still, I think it has its place. It definitely is not always recommendable, but as a story, the original Star Wars, so the very first ones, were about a guy who was a farmer, absolute nobody, kind of a loser who didn't have a good life, like really in the pits of life, pretty much. And just kind of out of nowhere, he has the chance given to him to become a hero and to save the galaxy, quite literally. And what's interesting about that is that it's not necessarily he's not necessarily virtuous like in Lord of the Rings, but you're giving a nobody, you're giving the audience, you and me, nobodies, really, I mean, which is not a bad thing, as Tolkien also would say. But we as nobodies want to look at a character and to see something of ourselves in them. And so when you look at Luke Skywalker, you see a guy who's like, oh, okay, wow, he went from nothing to something. And that's something we can kind of aspire to and really root for. So by the end, when he's struggling with the dark side, but he overcomes it and conquers and wins, we actually have kind of gone with him on that journey. And we can compare that to the newest shows, which I haven't even watched, but they're only the only thing that Disney, who owns the Star Wars brand now, have been able to understand from the popularity of Star Wars is Jedi versus Sith. So good warrior versus bad warrior, and they all they can do is create stories about that. That's it. Like that's the line that they can create. And what they don't understand is like that was never the popularity anyway. Now that's a side factor that's neat. Lightsabers are pretty cool, but people actually just want somebody to root for. They don't just want a really cool Jedi going around fighting a really cool Sith. That's can be part of the story, but it can't be all of the story. And now, the last thing I heard is the newest show they're coming out with, I think here in the next couple of weeks, is exactly what you were just mentioning. Is that they purposely are making it so it's not even Sith versus Jedi. It's kind of this vague idea of nobody's really good or bad. It's just who's searching for power. So you really
Yeah,
it's
right.
amazing. They just can't just say, hey, here's an interesting story, and we're going to tell it. They can't do it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and that was the same. I think in the Mandalorian at some point, like because I think that's part of the attraction with Lord of the Rings. You have that clear good and evil, and you'd never have like a good orc. You just know, okay, everything about them is evil. And then like with the the Mandalorian, eventually there was this one scene, like I remember with a stormtrooper, and it was only really subtle in that one, but it was kind of the question, like in the end, are they really the bad ones, or are the other ones the bad ones? And there are always two sides to it, but I think the way they asked it, it almost went to the point that they're asking general if there is any evil at all. And then like, or crazier things is like the movie like Maleficent, where in the end it's not the prince who gives like the redeeming kiss, or it's the witch itself. So obviously that's really wrong on so many levels, but it's like all these movies push this kind of thing that like it's like, okay, there is no real evil, or the evil has some good to it too. Everything has two sides. And like, because Maleficent, I think she was literally modeled after one, like they took a picture or a real description of an old demon, like from somewhere, and modeled her after that. I mean, she is really scary. Like they say in the movie, like everyone was scared. I think the only one who went near her was her own daughter. So her own daughter had to film that one scene because no one else dared to go close to her. And yeah, and so it's like it's really strange the way they're pushing that, because I mean in Lord of the Rings you also have these two sides to a character, like Boromir, you know, who has to overcome it and who fails. And so, of course, we always have to overcome evil, and it's part of the fallen nature that we have. But like the thing that you were also mentioning in the beginning is like they really try to push that there is no clear difference between good and evil. It's just the angle how you look at it, and what is actually evil might actually be good from a different point of view. And that's the interesting thing in the trend that you see everywhere.
No, it's that's it, and it goes along with this idea of your truth and my truth, and it just means that, so in the end, it's a big part of modernism, right? That it's all relative, it's relativism, it's yeah, it's point of view, it's whatever, if it's from this point of view, if you think it this way, then that's fine, that's good. It's like, no, of course not. That's not how it works. I mean, there is a good and a bad, there is evil, there is truth, and there is falsity, and I think that's exactly, again, what they're trying to preach is not the case. But what I appreciate about it is that it's failing. Like, they are drastically failing. I mean, Disney has lost billions since they bought Star Wars, and their movies have not made any money from Star Wars. So they bought Star Wars from George Lucas. Boy, it must have been about 10, 12 years ago now, and they have not made back the money they spent on it, and they probably never will now, because they've ruined the franchise. They literally broke it. They broke Star Wars. They broke, really, probably the biggest franchise in the world, in terms of movies, and they broke it because they didn't understand how to tell a story. All they could do was try to, they kind of guessed what people find attractive about Star Wars, and then try to, at least put a little bit of our own political beliefs in it. And it's really bizarre, because it's like, is it that hard? I mean, people have been telling interesting stories for thousands of years. I suppose not on a screen. I mean, that's for 100 years. But why all of a sudden are we just devoid of imagination? I suppose, and that's a really interesting question. It's something that, again, you and I talked about the other day. That I remember when I was at the lowest part of my life, in my early 20s, and I remember the feeling. I can't say the feeling, because the point is, I didn't feel anything. I didn't have any emotions, like, at all. It's bizarre to think about it now, but I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. I was like a total blob of non-emotion. And I think it was a lot of different things. I think it came from way too much media. I mean, I spent most of my days just watching movies and TV and playing video games, and just being a loser. It came from, I think, probably bad diet. It came from, these other, just lame, lazy immoralities. And I think it just eventually just like, meh, I don't have, I can't say I don't have a soul, but I mean, yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't feel anything. So how can I create anything? And it really makes me wonder if that's the issue today.
Yeah, yeah, might be true. Yeah, yeah, and it's also like, yeah, yeah. The like when you said in the beginning that we don't watch any movies, I think we should maybe clarify too. It's not just because we say okay, we just don't do that because that's better or something. It's also like a lot of the stuff is just boring or
Yeah.
not that interesting, or it's like we watch something and immediately it's like, okay, this is so like pushing a message or something. Like, I don't know, it's just hard to find stuff that really captures you. And I suppose some series could get you really hooked on, but I'm also really grateful not right now to be hooked on any series because yeah, I think it would just cost a lot of sleep. And most modern ones, the stuff that they promote is not really useful and it's mostly moral. So actually, I feel really relieved. I don't have any like addiction to any kind of series where I need to know what's happening the next day. It's actually really nice to just have an evening to talk. It's way more enjoyable, and yeah, I don't know. And with little kids anyway, you try to get the sleep that you can. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
feel, yeah,
No,
more
just
free. It's not a sacrifice, so to say. I just wanted to like clarify that kind of, I guess.
yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting that I think it was around the same time where we watched The Mandalorian was the last series I think we ever watched actually. And I think at the same time, around the same time, in those same weeks, we watched Persuasion. Or, we didn't watch
Yeah,
it. We watched like the first
okay.
20 minutes of it, like literally the first 20 minutes of the new Persuasion Jane Austen
Yeah,
movie.
like a remake. Yeah,
Is a
that's right.
remake, and it's so absurdly, ridiculously stupid. I mean, and really, I mean that. Like that's not exaggerating. Don't watch it, please. Don't watch it. It's so dumb. It's so against what Jane Austen wrote. Her characters, her ideals. It's an absolute absurdity. And I think that was real. I think both of us. I think it was almost like we. I think we. I don't think we did, but we probably kind of at heart looked at each other like, okay, this is ridiculous. What's the pick up a book or something because it really was. It was like, okay, this is absurd. I mean, they're just exactly they're playing with characters that are that were. And it's happened with Lord of the Rings too. With the show they made about that they take
Yeah,
characters that
yeah,
Tolkien made and they don't understand that Tolkien built his characters off of virtue.
yeah.
His points were based
Same
on
with
Catholicism.
Persuasion. They took the names like for that Persuasion movie and like
Yeah,
the time, placed them in the same time and everything, but everything else was different. Like the exact things, like I think she was always like you could hear what she thinks in her head. That was part of the narration, and it was always
right.
condescending about her family, and she was like kind of in her head rolling her eyes, and it was just like they didn't get the point of the character at all, and they just thought, okay, like the story was what captured people, or but they missed some of the main points because I don't know, if you lose that eye for true goodness, if you numb yourself too much and you degrade yourself with modern influences and you just miss that you're literally unable to see it, or I'm not entirely sure. But
It's a great question. I don't know either, but it's bizarre, and I think that's almost the best case for them that they just missed it. I think it seems on that case that they purposely ruined the character because again, if you read the books, she is a good like she's virtuous. Like that's kind of the point. Like she is
right.
she's becoming an old maid because she missed her chance to marry her one true love because someone talked her out of it pretty much. And she's really sad and she's kind of depressed. She's a flower that is no longer blooming, to use Jane Austen type of terminology, but she is good. That's the entire basis of the entire character, that she is good and she is giving and she is kind and she does everything for everyone else and in an entire world that is absolutely ridiculous around her. I mean, her family is an absurdity, every single one of them, but she is the one steady character of goodness and kindness and being true and faithful and all of these types of good, virtuous things. And this movie comes and just tears them apart in the first 10 minutes. It was so bad we turned it off. But again, I
Yeah,
think it's exactly right that they don't understand this. Like people want that. People want heroes. They don't want vague characters. They don't want, let's say, Game of Thrones, which obviously I don't know well, but I know that the characters, there is no real hero. That they're all these like not just they're not flawed. They're not Frodo Baggins has has issues with going forward with his mission or whatever. They are, they're immoral. They're doing all these horrible things. They're murderers. They're awful, awful people. And so eventually you can't really root for anybody. And I think, as you said earlier, it was a great point. They can't. It's no longer. They don't give you someone to root for. They just have to give you something to be shocked about, and that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And then I wonder too, like naturally, like, is that something like I think some people are attracted to that, but do you think that's natural or because like I mean I read the story once that as babies they are attracted to good versus evil. Like they did these experiments, it was in a science journal and they like literally showed really little babies like sort of like they made an experiment, showed them different forms like triangle and like a circle, but they were little figures like acting, and there was like a bad figure that threw another figure down a mountain, and then there was like a helping figure, and you could see that even the little babies were attracted to the helping type of shape and like the good shape. And so it's like okay, they were not trained that way, they were way too small. So the point of the study was that we are actually born with like a moral preference for good. And so I think when someone right now, because we've heard this before, someone saying, okay, Lord of the Rings is too clear cut good and evil. Like I like when there are two sides to something, when there is like, okay, there is no clear, like this person is good or evil. Everyone has both sides. And so do you think that is natural, or do you think that's something that's literally acquired through modern media and it's being pushed on us? And like,
Well, I mean,
that's kind of an interesting question, I think.
I think obviously, I think people are born also with a fallen human nature. So they so when you say that they want good, I see what you're saying, that they want to take in goodness. They don't. There's no instinct of, I'm going to go read a really dark, ugly book. I'm going to go listen to metal music. I agree. I don't think it's not natural, because beauty is godliness, right? I mean, God is beauty. So you can tell pretty easily. You and I were just talking about that on the way home from church today. We passed by a Novus Ordo church, and they have a flag, that is as ugly as you'd expect. It's really horrific, and really just it's awful. It's ugly, and it can't be Catholic. It's again, it's just one of these things that you look at. It's like, no, it really helps me be secure in my position that the people in Rome, the people who are running the Roman Church, is not the true Catholic Church of Christ, because it is ugly. And I think that there is something to that, and I think that as you say, that I think that we are born with the understanding of beauty. I mean, because we're born, I guess, as, I don't know, I mean, natural beings, and I think absolutely that is, I think that's learned through media. Yeah, absolutely. It's a rebellion. Like if you talk about metal music, it's learned through being rebellious, or wanting to feel anger. Perhaps these people have stopped being able to feel anymore, and so they
So you think they
have,
just want to feel something? So even if
right.
that's
Yeah.
anger, then that's like, just give me something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's absolutely the case. So I think that's why people go to see horror movies. I think part of it is because, yeah, okay, you go with your girlfriend and, oh, scary movie. And so I think some of it's just being silly, though. Again, that's a whole nother topic. People should not see horror movies. I've talked about that at length with Intruibo, and I totally agree that is definitely opening up ideas, et cetera, that you don't want to do. But again, it's just this desire to feel something, feel anger or fear, or maybe you go to see a movie to feel sadness. And I think that's, if you need that, like actually need it, like crave that to feel that, and you need it from media, that can't be healthy. It just, I mean, I think in our culture is so filled with it that I think we don't even think about it anymore.
Right, right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess it's just, I guess, one of those things. And I think that you and I would highly recommend, and I talked about this with Eliza Kiernan a couple weeks ago about music, that you do a detox from music, from movies, from TV. Just really put a blanket over your TV for a month, and just don't even turn it on. Now, I'm a big sports fan, so I understand that can be hard. Um, Honestly, I live in Germany. Everything's at 2 a.m., so I've kind of learned to deal with that anyway. But, you know, you just, if you do it, and again, you would agree with me here too, that if you just stop watching everything, it's actually crazy. It like turns your entire dial, your sensitivity dial from wherever it was. Let's say it's low or very low or medium, and it turns your sensitivity level up to high in a good way. And when I mean sensitivity, I mean you're making the right decisions and saying I shouldn't be watching this. And for goodness sake, guys, we're Catholics. I mean that's what we're here for. I mean, I don't mean to preach to anybody, but I mean, we really have to think of these things. What are we putting into our minds? And I'm telling you, shut it all off, and you're going to be amazed. The first time you watch a movie, you're going to be like, "Oh, wow, that's yeah, it's not that good."
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think it's what has to happen too. Like, for so many modern movies, we have to start making excuses. Like, okay, yeah, mm, what happens here is probably not good, but it's okay. I can distinguish, or it's good here. And you keep making these excuses, and you get so used to it. And then, like, I think when you just cut it out for a while, eventually you watch it, and I mean, for me, it was like the attraction was kind of gone. It's like, okay, I really don't need that. It's not even interesting. It's not adding to my life. And I mean, for me, it's a like I yeah, it's a like a relief. Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously you can't force anyone to do that, but you can recommend it. I mean, it's yeah, it really makes things easier in a way.
Well, and I still love movies. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't like. I love movies, and I love. But just make sure they're good ones. That's it. I mean,
Yeah,
like I'm not saying never watch a movie again. I love movie. I can tell you. That is my putting on a popcorn, cheese. Get sitting down and watching a movie or a good show. I mean,
right.
that's awesome. I love that. I am certainly not discouraging that. All I'm saying is take a month off, and then it will change your dial to okay, this is worth watching, or this isn't, and it will really. You won't need some Father McKenna sitting next to you, some moral guide saying, "Hey, you should or shouldn't watch this." You're going to know, and it really is going to be a lot better for you, for your family, and it helps immediately. I really can't recommend it enough. Just turn it off for a month, and then come back to it, and your whole view of television will be different. Now, Ina, we got to go here pretty quick, but I want to talk about one other topic real quickly because I found this interesting. We discussed this briefly beforehand that we talk often about fashion, women's fashion especially, but men's too. And we've had shows in the past covering the topic, and it's something that I think is important. And I think people should dress to the best of their abilities, especially at mass. If you're walking into the house of God, you should act like it, dress like it. But I think one of the things that we miss a lot in terms of attractiveness, like how somebody is attractive, and not necessarily to the opposite, gender. I mean, it can literally just be to anybody. And I think part of it is posture. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think a lot of like posture is like a mirroring of your inner like confidence or what you think of yourself. And I think even if we don't actively think about it, I think subconsciously we also judge that when we see someone who's like bowed over, and we just think, okay, this is a person who is uncomfortable in their own skin. Whereas if someone is like really open and has open facial features and broad shoulders, and we immediately also feel more at ease around them because they have something about them that tells you they're at ease with themselves. And so I think it really has a big effect. Yeah, how you carry yourself as a woman or as a man. Yeah, I think it should be different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a great point, and I think that's a missed art. And I think that there's kind of this misconception that okay, if I look feminine sometimes, or if I look too feminine, maybe I am being suggestive or trying to flirt or being vain. And there, of course, there is a line. You can't be, don't be suggestive. I mean, I think that's fairly obvious at times. Don't wear tight clothes and stuff. But I think if you dress, and Ina, you made a great point before we came on the show. It's like, if you dress modestly, you feel more comfortable standing femininely, right?
right, right.
And
Yeah,
that's
I think, yeah,
interesting.
especially. yeah, if you're a teenager and maybe you're not dressed the way you should be, I think you naturally maybe even know it and you're still insecure in your body. And so you maybe have more the tendency to like, yeah, lean over and like, yeah, put your shoulders down and because you're trying to hide something what your clothes are not hiding or but if you have dignified clothing, it's easy to stand upright and just be confident in yourself and yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really worthwhile. Find someone in your church or that you know of that you find of the same sex. So a woman if you're a woman, a man if you're a man, and find somebody that you find to be wow. That's someone that I admire, I respect, I want to be like. And I think we all have that person, usually an older person. And then ask yourself, okay, why? And how do they stand? How do they shake my hand? How do they look me in the eye? And I guarantee you those things are a big part of what attracts you to them. And it's not always the case, obviously not. Sometimes people have terrible posture and terrible handshake and are the best people. That of course
Right.
that of
That's
course can be the case. And I'm not saying it's a moral thing, but
yeah.
I think you can look at someone. There are many times everybody knows what I'm talking about. You see someone's like, wow, that guy, he looks like he looks like John Wayne, or she looks like Grace Kelly. And hey, look at them. If you can't find someone that I mean, look at Grace Kelly, look at John Wayne. I mean, why are they known to be, the most masculine, the most feminine people in the last 100 years? You guys know what I'm saying. I mean, roundabouts. And
Not for the smoking, in my opinion.
the smoking not John Wayne, yeah, tisk tisk. But yeah, so if you want to, or Cary Grant, one of these older guys, probably from the 50s, 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, because they still understood how to be manly. They understood how to stand straight. They understood how to walk upstairs and down. It's a really interesting thing. I think it's something that people need to maybe watch some of these old movies because it actually gives you a glimpse of just how men back in the day actually had gracefulness. They actually were graceful in a manly way. It's really interesting, I think. And I think that's a fascinating thing that I think people that I absolutely could still learn from myself. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the peak of masculinity. I mean, I'm close. I'm one step away from it, I suppose. But I'll be the next John Wayne, right? And without the smoking. But I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding.
Perfect.
I had to show off with my wife on the show. But but no, seriously though, I think it
Yeah, I
is.
think it's all part of how men and women have gotten more similar, or at least have lost some of what really sets them apart today. I mean, it's obviously in fashion, and today, like, yeah, like we said earlier, I think back in the day, but let's say 50, 60, 70 years ago, I think it was way more pronounced that men looked at women as a totally different species and the other way around, and they treated each other with more respect. And today, I think those gender lines are so blurring. And then, yeah, you lose a lot of that too. And I think it goes hand in hand with feminism and everything. But yeah, and obviously not saying it's like you have to really use your femininity for goodness and like take Mary as your model and
Right.
but it's good to be different.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely. Yeah, and again, of course, we didn't even mention that, but of course, it all starts with modesty and morality and dressing in the Mary like fashion. And that's absolutely that's the place to start. But it's also so let's say you dress really nicely, and again, we got to wrap this up pretty quickly. But if you dress really nicely and you have this really modest, I won't say nicely, but really modest, perfectly modest, nothing at all questionable about it. It's in the Mary like standards, etc. But you're standing, and I think this is a really good example, at least that comes to my mind. If you're a woman and you're standing, if you're facing me, or say we're having a conversation, you're facing me straight on, your legs are equal, length to your shoulder, so you're standing really with your wide hips, I suppose, if that makes any sense. So your legs kind of spread a little bit with your shoulders kind of equal with your knees almost, and you're just standing there straight on and not with a straight back, and I see it all the time, and it's just not feminine. It's just so it doesn't matter what you're wearing. It's just immediately it's like, ugh. Even if you're pretty, whatever. I think this is a really important thing, and maybe we need like a posture coach or something because I think it's something that it's a lost art. I mean, very truly, and same with men. For goodness sake, men who slouch, men who put their hands in their pockets, men who have a limp handshake. These are things. These aren't things that will just lose you a potential future wife. They will lose you jobs. They will lose you respect. These are things that you just need to have. You need to, and really seriously, if you're a young man, young woman out there, find someone who you think can do this stuff and practice. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds stupid. It is worth it. Go to your parents and say, Dad, Mom, teach me how to shake a hand, because it seriously matters. I mean, and I know, especially in America, that kind of stuff is really valued. And in eye contact, if I meet you for the first time and you shake my hand with a dead fish handshake, I'm making a motion here on an audio show. Smart, Kevin. But anyway, you're doing a dead fish handshake, and you're looking up over my right shoulder. Okay, thanks, buddy. I mean, yeah, are you 10? It's so I think definitely worth considering to do our best.
Very,
Yeah.
very true. The kids are just coming in.
Perfect timing. Well,
Really good
I
time
heard
to grab them all.
mama. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mama's closer to the kids. Well, Ina, it's been fun. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you came on. I know
Thank you.
you were skeptical at
Thanks.
first, but you did great, as I knew you would. I know everybody else knew
That's
you would
true.
as well. I'm going to probably have to mute you here pretty quickly as the kids come in. Everyone, please again say a prayer for Matt. We hope to have him back next week. I'm sure he will be. Poor guy. Hopefully, I don't know if it's food poisoning or what, but it sounded pretty rough. We'll be back next Monday with more of Monday Mornings with Matt and Kevin. Ina, it's been fun. I will see you in about 30 seconds. Everybody else, God bless you, and we will see you next time. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, all of those things, and let us know if you know about any posture
Yeah,
coaches out there, because
great. And let us know what you think about modern movies, or if there are any good ones worth our time.
yes, absolutely. Tell us the good movies, because I do absolutely love movies. I just don't love most of the ones that are produced. So, yeah, let us know. We'll see you guys next week. God bless.